It was a good day, I think, overall. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers are here. Day two, still not a whole ton of Aaron Rodgers in team stuff, but I think that'll come once we get to training camp. Right now, it's a kind of see what Mason has, kind of see what you're getting out of Will Howard, that kind of stuff. But what I am seeing is a little bit of Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf connection going on. It feels as if whenever those two are in line, they make sure that they have a moment to play with each other and receive I guess the same lineup as we move forward. And I think that's significant. I'm not saying that, helmets and shorts is going to dictate anything. And you could kind of tell, to be really honest with you, like Aaron Rodgers is a little bit juiced up and you could get the vibe. And I'll say this, he looked way more mobile today than he did 24 hours ago. I don't know if that's just shaking the rust off or what, but definitely looked like a little bit of a more nimble quarterback out there working with Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, and Skylar Thompson. But him and DK seem to be getting some connection down. DK just looks so smooth and big and natural out here that none of it comes as a worry. But it's nice to see Aaron. It's nice to see DK working together. I'll tell you this, Calvin Austin, my friend, looks better by the day. That guy continues to be uber impressive and grow. And while I don't think it rules out a wide receiver 2 at some point during this offseason, I will say that Calvin Austin is putting up one hell of a fight to make sure that he is the guy. And I think it's the most noticeable thing you could see. Calvin is so smooth and fast on his releases, and he's open quite a bit. And I don't know if I'm saying a winner at day 2, I think it's Calvin Austin, to be really honest with you. I have another name. I definitely have another name, but we'll get there in a little bit. But for right now, I would say Calvin Austin. But getting that connection, DK and Aaron, I think is big. Aaron's zip is certainly there, my friend.
Okay.
Like certainly 100% there. And again, to get a little bit more nimble, a little bit more agile, we'll add a little speed after day 1. I think was impressive as well.
Incredible. Incredible. Do you, let me ask you, let me throw a question out for you, and then I'll let you take us in whatever direction you were planning to. But as you're talking about Calvin Austin being the winner of day 2 here of minicamp, it brings up this question. Do you think there was any sort of conversation? I know we heard some very encouraging comments from the coaches today about where Calvin Austin is and the opportunity in front of him. So we know it's kind of there, but do you think that he had any conversations with them about how long of a leash he potentially has to maybe earn wide receiver 2? Or do you think that this is all just smokescreen, mini camp, fun stuff to talk about? Not to be a Debbie Downer, but I'm curious to see, does it seem like this is a fair, we talked about quarterback competition before. Is this a wide receiver competition truly, or is this a quote unquote wide receiver competition for number 2 until the next player comes in who will ultimately take that role?
So before I reply to that, I want to play Zach Azzani's clip because that's a really good transition here. This is what Zach Azzani said on the matter earlier today about Calvin Austin.
Committee, which I'm okay with because there's a lot of really cool little pieces there that are sneaky. So everyone's downplaying, underplaying our group right now. I love it that way. I don't really want anyone looking at us anyway. It'll be good. So I think that 2 spot is all Calvin's right now. And really, him and DK are such different players that, there's going to be plays where he is the one guy because that's his route and vice versa because they're so different, in stature. So it's a good question.
You look at Zach Azzani, he's pretty straightforward there, and I appreciate him being pretty straightforward. I don't think he makes that final call, but I'll say this: the Steelers love Calvin, man. Like, there's no part of the Pittsburgh Steelers that look at Calvin Austin as a guy who should be on the bench more often than he's not. I don't think that it's going to hold them back from a wide receiver 2, but I don't think Calvin's going to be the reason that they go out and get one necessarily. I don't think they're going to look at Calvin Austin and say, oh, okay, well, he's just not good enough and we have to go get somebody. They'll look at it and say, Calvin's good enough, maybe the rest of the group isn't, and we need to go get somebody else. Or, okay, we're gearing up for one last run, we just got to go get somebody else. But I don't think it takes away from Calvin. Like, if Chris Olave ended up here, if Gabe Davis ended up here, if Romeo Doubs ended up here, I don't think Calvin Austin comes off the field any less or any more than he was going to. He's still going to be a guy who's on the field all the time. in Pittsburgh. So I don't necessarily think it's a wide receiver 2 competition, but I do think that it's I just think Calvin Austin's the 2B no matter what. That's just the role he's going to play. So no matter who they bring in here, which I anticipate them bringing somebody in, like there's no part of me that thinks they won't. I don't think it's going to happen today, but I think it's going to happen eventually. But I don't think it hurts Calvin Austin. I don't think it impacts him at all because he's a slot guy. They're going to use him in the slot. They're going to use him as a seam threat. And that's the role he's going to play. And they're not going to bring in anybody to replace that role. They're going to bring in an outside body and say, okay, this guy's another, I want to say George Pickens, but obviously not George Pickens, while Calvin Austin is kind of doing his thing.
Okay. That is the most encouraging answer I could have heard, honestly, from that question. I think what I want to see is just, I wrote about previously before, I think he's the biggest winner. Calvin Austin is the biggest winner of the Rodgers signing and bringing him in for the offense. So I would love to see him get a fair shake, as it were, to actually fill that opportunity and step up when given that opportunity. So it's incredibly encouraging from an outside perspective to hear that, Azani was so emphatic about Austin being the number 2 and being the guy who is, has a very specific set of skills like Liam Neeson that can help this offense. But it's, we're all hoping to see it translate. I think we're all huge fans of him as a person and sort of how much he's battled back ever since he's come into the league. Missing your rookie year could be devastating for any sort of player in the NFL. So it's an encouraging answer. So I'm happy to hear that. I know, not putting the cart before the horse here, but it's good to hear so far. The comments seem encouraging.
I agree. And look I think just like you said, like you just watch what Aaron can do and you watch how much Calvin has grown seemingly in last year. And you just think that that's a match made in heaven. Like there's so many times last year where you could go on and watch the tape and Calvin's wide open, but he's open before Russ could get to him, or he's open before Justin could get to him. And I mean, he just doesn't get an opportunity. You look at Pat Fryermuth's the other guy that we talked about. And you go back and there's so many times where he's standing there and there's nobody within 15 yards of the guy, 15 yards. And he's just standing there like, yeah, there's no chance somebody's going to throw me the football here. There's no chance. I think with Aaron, a guy who sees the field as well as he does, processes it as fast as he does, that like those are going to be the 2 guys that in my eyes benefit the most out of the Aaron Rodgers thing. Is by far, without question, actually it'll be Calvin Austin and Pat Fryermuth. And then I think it just depends on if Roman Wilson could develop into a quality route runner. If he could become a good route runner, you don't need to go out and get somebody else, but right now that's where Roman struggles. Roman's a super physical guy who's great at run blocking, has crazy speed, really, really good hands. Not the best route runner. And you could tell he's working on that stuff. You could see it in his game right now, but he needs to develop there to be able to kind of shut down the noise and claim that spot in that lineup. But I'm excited for what Calvin does, because I don't think there's any part of me that thinks Calvin isn't going to succeed in this offense.